A monkey in a general's fort's uniform.
3 white soldiers, 1 black woman. A military barbecue packed with families, and every single one
Now
of
I've
them
seen
heard
everything.
it. She stood there in full dress greens, a star on each shoulder, ribbons earned in Iraq and Afghanistan pinned across her chest.
Publicly, take that fake uniform off, dog. You're embarrassing yourself.
He flicked the star off her shoulder with his finger. His buddy shoved a phone in her face, laughing. The third one just stood there, watching. Dozens of people saw it. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. She looked at all 3 of them, one by one, slow.
Are you finished?
They had no idea that the dog they just spat on could destroy everything they'd spent their whole careers building. Damn! But wait. This story starts way before the barbecue, in a quiet kitchen in Fayetteville. 6 hours earlier, the morning was quiet. Wanda Underwood stood in her kitchen at 5:45 a.m. The coffee maker hissed and dripped behind her. Steam curled up from the mug on the counter. Outside, the North Carolina sky was still gray. That soft kind of gray that comes right before the sun breaks through. She lived alone in a modest 3-bedroom house in Fayetteville. Nothing fancy. A small yard with a magnolia tree out front. A porch with 2 rocking chairs that she never sat in because she was never home long enough. The walls told her story better than she ever would. A framed photo of her at 22, West Point graduation, class of 1994. Eyes sharp, jaw set, the only black woman in her row. Next to it, a photo from Fallujah. Dust on her face, rifle across her chest, a convoy burning behind her. Then, Baghdad, Kabul, Fort Hood, the Pentagon, and at the center of them all, a framed Silver Star citation. The words on it read, "For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States." 32 years, 5 combat deployments, 1 Purple Heart from the shrapnel that still ached in her left knee every winter. Wanda pressed her iron across the trousers of her Army service uniform. Slow, careful strokes. The crease had to be perfect. She learned that from her father, a retired sergeant major, who told her every morning before school, "You show up sharp, they got nothing to say about you." She held up the jacket, ran her fingers across the ribbons, touched the single star on the shoulder. Brigadier General. The star was small, no bigger than a quarter, but it carried the weight of 3 decades. Her phone buzzed, a video call from her daughter, Aisha. "Morning, Mama. You ironing already?" Wanda smiled. "You know I am." "Grandma!" A tiny voice squealed in the background. 3-year-old Nyla pressed her face against the screen, all cheeks and giggles. "There's my baby," Wanda said. She laughed, the kind of warm, full laugh that only grandchildren can pull out of a person. They talked for 10 minutes. Nyla showed her a drawing of a butterfly. Aisha reminded her to eat something before the event. Wanda said she would. She probably wouldn't. She hung up, finished her coffee, and loaded a foil-covered pan of banana pudding into the back seat of her gray sedan. Homemade. Her mother's recipe. She brought it to every base event. Had for 20 years. She drove to Fort Liberty, one of the largest military installations in the world, home of the 82nd Airborne Division, home of U.S. Army Special Operations Command, home to over 50,000 soldiers and their families. The Family Appreciation Barbecue was an annual tradition. Grills lined up across the main pavilion, smoke rising into the Carolina pines. The smell of charcoal, hickory, and cheap hot dogs filled the air. Country music played from a set of speakers someone had zip-tied to a pole. Soldiers were told to come in casual clothes, shorts, t-shirts, flip-flops, but senior leaders were expected in uniform. Wanda had just transferred from the Pentagon 2 weeks ago. Most soldiers on base had never seen her face. She parked in the regular lot, not the VIP section. She never used it. She grabbed the pudding pan, shut the door with her hip, and walked toward the pavilion like any other person heading to a Saturday cookout. Nobody saluted. Nobody noticed. That was fine with her. Across the pavilion, 3 soldiers leaned against a fence near the grills. Sergeant First Class Kyle Brennan was the loudest. He always was. 30 years old, 6'2", built like a refrigerator. He was telling a story about his deployment to Syria. Except, the way he told it, you'd think he single-handedly won the war. Corporal Derek Swanson stood next to him, phone in hand. Always recording. Always looking for content. He laughed at everything Brennan said like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Specialist Tyler Combs was the quiet one. 22, new to the unit. He followed Brennan around because that was easier than standing alone. Other soldiers nearby exchanged glances when Brennan talked. A few rolled their eyes, but nobody said anything. That was the culture. You didn't challenge Brennan. Not because he was respected, because he was loud, and loud people are exhausting to fight. Then Wanda walked past them. Brennan saw her first. She was walking toward the main table, pudding pan balanced in both hands. The afternoon sun hit the star on her shoulder, and it flashed, just for a second, like a tiny mirror catching light. Brennan squinted. Then he elbowed Swanson. "Yo, you seeing this?" Swanson looked up from his phone. His eyes followed Brennan's gaze across the pavilion to the black woman in full dress greens walking calmly through the crowd. "No way," Swanson whispered. Brennan tilted his head. A grin spread across his face, the kind of grin that comes right before something ugly. "A monkey in a general's uniform," he said. "Now I've seen everything." He pushed off the fence and started walking toward her. Swanson followed, phone already up and recording. Combs hesitated for a second, looked around, then jogged to catch up. Brennan stepped directly into Wanda's path. She stopped. The pudding pan pressed against her stomach. The smell of vanilla and banana wafted up between them. He looked her up and down. Slow. Head to toe and back again. The way you look at something you've already decided doesn't belong. "Take that fake uniform off, dog," he said. "You're embarrassing yourself." His voice was loud enough that the family at the nearest picnic table turned around. A woman pulled her toddler closer. A man with a beer in his hand froze mid-sip. Wanda didn't move. Her eyes locked onto Brennan's face. She studied him the way you'd study a weather pattern, calmly calculating which direction the storm was heading. "Excuse me, Sergeant," she said. Her voice was level, not soft, not loud, just steady. The voice of someone who had given orders under mortar fire and never once raised it. Brennan laughed, short, sharp, like a bark. "Oh, she even knows the ranks. That's cute." He looked back at Swanson. "She's committed to the costume, I'll give her that." Swanson zoomed in with his camera. "This is gold, bro. TikTok's gonna eat this up." Brennan turned back to Wanda. He leaned in closer. The smell of cheap cologne and barbecue smoke hit her face. She didn't step back, didn't blink. "Where'd you get this?" He pointed at the star on her shoulder. "Potty City? Amazon? Because I know damn well the United States Army didn't pin that on someone like you." Someone like you. 3 words. Simple. Ordinary. But loaded with everything they carried. Every assumption, every prejudice, every unspoken belief that a black woman couldn't possibly hold authority over a white man in uniform. Wanda set the pudding pan down on the nearest table. Carefully. The foil crinkled in the silence. "I'd suggest you step back, Sergeant," she said. "Or what?" Brennan spread his arms wide. "You gonna call someone? Who you gonna call? Your manager?" Swanson cackled behind his phone. A few soldiers nearby shifted on their feet. Eyes darted. Nobody intervened. Then Brennan did something that crossed a line no soldier should ever cross. He reached out and flicked the star on her shoulder with his middle finger. The metal made a tiny ping sound, barely audible. But in that moment, it rang louder than a gunshot. Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 89, disrespecting a superior commissioned officer is a court-martial offense. Touching their rank insignia in contempt isn't just disrespect. It's a career-ending act of stupidity. Brennan didn't know that. Or maybe he did, and he simply didn't believe this woman was real. "My daughter's got one of these on her Girl Scout vest," he said, grinning. "Looks about the same." Wanda's jaw tightened. Just slightly. If you weren't watching closely, you'd miss it. Her eyes narrowed. Not in fear, not in hurt, in recognition. She had seen men like Brennan in every country she'd ever served in. Different faces, same arrogance, same blindness. She had survived IEDs in Fallujah. She had pulled a wounded soldier out of a burning Humvee in Kandahar with shrapnel in her knee. 3 drunk on arrogance soldiers at a barbecue were not going to rattle Brigadier General Wanda Underwood. But she wasn't done being tested. "You know what?" Brennan said, snapping his fingers like an idea just hit him. "This is actually a crime. Stolen valor. You know what that is, sweetheart? It's when nobodies like you put on a uniform you didn't earn to feel important." He looked at Swanson. "We should call the MPs. Seriously, this is a federal offense." Swanson nodded, still filming. "Straight up. We'd be doing everyone a favor." Combs stood behind them. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes were on the ground. He hadn't said a word, but his silence was its own kind of agreement. In a room full of people, saying nothing is still a choice. 20 feet away, Staff Sergeant Denise Calloway stood near the drink station with a cup of lemonade in her hand. She was 28, black, quiet, observant. And she knew exactly who Wanda Underwood was. 2 years ago, Calloway had attended a leadership lecture at this very base. The speaker was a colonel at the time, Wanda Underwood, before her promotion to general. Calloway remembered every word of that lecture. She remembered the way Wanda talked about resilience, about dignity, about the price black women pay for every inch of ground in the military. Now she was watching that same woman being humiliated in broad daylight by 3 men who couldn't tell the difference between a real general and their own ignorance. Calloway's hand moved slowly to her back pocket. She pulled out her phone, opened the camera, hit record. She didn't announce it, didn't make a scene. She just pointed the lens toward the confrontation and held it steady. If this was going to go the way she thought it was, there needed to be more than one record of it. Back at the scene, Brennan wasn't slowing down. "All right, sweetheart, I've been patient enough." He held out his hand. "Give me your ID. Now. Let's settle this." Wanda looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out her common access card, the military ID every service member carries. She held it up between 2 fingers, the way you hold a playing card. She didn't extend it toward him. She simply let him see it. Brennan snatched it from her hand. He looked at it. The card read, "BG, Wanda A. Underwood, Brigadier General, U.S. Army." His eyes moved across the text. His expression flickered, just for a half second. something between confusion and disbelief, the tiniest crack in his armor. Then he closed it back up. "These can be faked," he said. "Anybody with a printer can make one of these." And then, in a move that would later be replayed on every news channel in America, Sergeant First Class Kyle Brennan tossed Brigadier General Wanda Underwood's military ID onto the grass at her feet. The card tumbled through the air. It landed face up on the green grass. The laminated surface caught the sunlight. The word General stared up at the sky. The barbecue grills crackled behind them. The country music kept playing. A child somewhere laughed at something that had nothing to do with any of this. And Wanda Underwood looked down at her ID in the dirt. Then she looked up at Kyle Brennan. She didn't pick it up. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just stood there, perfectly still, the way only someone with 32 years of discipline can stand when every nerve in their body is telling them to break. And in her silence, the whole pavilion felt the weight of what just happened. Brennan wasn't done. He should have been. Any soldier with half a brain cell would have looked at that ID, felt the ground shift under his feet, and walked away. But Kyle Brennan wasn't that soldier. Kyle Brennan was the kind of man who doubles down when he's wrong, because admitting a mistake would mean admitting he wasn't as powerful as he pretended to be. He looked at Swanson. "Call the MP desk. Tell them we've got a stolen valor situation at the main pavilion." Swanson lowered his camera for a second. "Wait, for real? Did I stutter? Call them." Swanson pulled up the number and started dialing. The phone pressed against his ear. He turned slightly away from the crowd, like he knew, somewhere deep, that what he was doing might not be right. But he dialed anyway, because Brennan told him to. And Swanson always did what Brennan told him to. Wanda watched him dial. Her face didn't change. Not a twitch, not a flinch. She stood the way she always stood when things got bad. Hands at her sides, weight balanced, eyes forward. The posture of a woman who had been in rooms where the stakes were life and death, and had never once been the one to break. "You're making a mistake, Sergeant," she said. Quiet, almost gentle, like a warning you give someone right before they step off a cliff. Brennan snorted. "The only mistake here is whatever clown at the costume shop sold you that jacket." He stepped toward her again, closer this time, close enough that she could see the veins in his neck, close enough that the families at the nearest table pulled their children onto their laps. "Turn around," he said. Wanda blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said turn around. If you're really military, you won't mind a pat-down. We need to make sure you're not carrying anything you shouldn't be." The words hung in the air like smoke. A pat-down. At a barbecue. By a sergeant with no authority, no orders, and no legal right to touch another human being, let alone a general officer. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't procedure. This was a man who saw a black woman and decided that the rules didn't apply, that his suspicion was enough, that his gut feeling was a warrant, that the color of her skin was probable cause. Wanda didn't turn around. She looked at Brennan with an expression that could freeze lava. "You will not touch me," she said. Each word was a sentence of its own, measured, final. The kind of voice that stopped lieutenants cold in their tracks at West Point. Brennan's jaw clenched. He didn't like being told no, especially not by a woman, especially not by a black woman. You could see it in the way his nostrils flared, the way his shoulders squared up, the way his right hand curled into a half fist at his side. "You don't give the orders here, sweetheart," he said. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. His breath was hot. It smelled like ketchup and cheap energy drinks. "I do." Behind him, Tyler Combs shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His face had gone pale. His eyes were darting, left, right, anywhere but forward. He looked like a kid who had followed his friends into a haunted house and just realized the door locked behind him.
But he didn't speak. He didn't step forward. He didn't say, "Hey man, maybe we should chill." He just stood there, hands in his pockets, mouth shut, watching a disaster unfold in real time and choosing, second by second, to do nothing. Silence isn't neutral. Silence is a side. And Combs had picked his. The crowd around the pavilion had grown. Word was spreading the way it always does on a military base, fast and in whispers. People drifted over from the grills, from the bounce house, from the parking lot. They formed a loose half-circle around the confrontation, close enough to see, but far enough to pretend they weren't involved. A master sergeant near the stage crossed his arms. A lieutenant's wife covered her mouth with her hand. A group of junior enlisted soldiers stood frozen near the cooler, sodas in hand, eyes wide. Nobody stepped in. The barbecue grills kept hissing. Grease popped and sizzled on hot metal. The country music played a song about summertime and freedom, the irony thick enough to choke on. Denise Calloway was still recording. Her phone was steady. Her hand was not. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips. She wanted to walk over there and end this herself. She wanted to scream across the pavilion, "That's a general, you idiot!" But she knew, from experience, that a black woman inserting herself into this scene would only give Brennan 2 targets instead of 1. So she kept recording, every second, every word, every frame. Brennan pulled out his own phone. He held it up and took a photo of Wanda's face. Close range, no permission. The shutter sound clicked like a slap. "Evidence," he said, "for the report." Then he pointed at the star on her shoulder, the one he had already flicked once. "I'm going to need you to take that off. Right now. You're wearing a rank you didn't earn on a base you don't belong on. That's stolen valor. That's a felony." He was wrong. On every count. Stolen valor, the Stolen Valor Act of 2013, only applies to fraudulent claims made to obtain money, property, or tangible benefits. Wearing a uniform at a barbecue isn't a felony. It isn't even a misdemeanor. But Brennan wasn't interested in law. He was interested in power. And right now, in his mind, he had all of it. Wanda looked at his phone. Then she looked at the star on her own shoulder. Then she looked back at Brennan. "No," she said. 1 word. 2 letters. And somehow it carried more authority than everything Brennan had said in the last 10 minutes combined. His face turned red. Not pink. Red. The color crept up from his collar to his ears, like a thermometer rising. His fists tightened fully now. The muscles in his forearms twitched. For a moment, just a moment, it looked like he might do something physical. Something beyond a flick. Something that would turn a disciplinary case into an assault charge. But he didn't. Not because he had self-control, because Swanson grabbed his arm. "Bro, people are watching." Brennan looked around for the first time. He saw the crowd. He saw the phones. Not just Swanson's, not just Calloway's, but at least 4 or 5 others now raised in the crowd. He saw the circle of faces staring at him with expressions that ranged from shock to disgust. He pulled his arm free from Swanson's grip, straightened his shirt, took a breath. "Fine," he said. "The MPs will handle it. We've done our part." He said it like he was a hero, like he had just performed a public service, like he had protected the base from a dangerous intruder.
instead of humiliating a decorated combat veteran in front of her peers and their families. Combs finally spoke. His voice cracked on the first word. "Yeah," he said. That's not cool, what she's doing."
It was nothing. A throwaway sentence. 5 words that meant absolutely zero. But it was enough to make him part of it. Officially, permanently, on the record. Wanda stood alone in the middle of that silent circle. The sun beat down on her shoulders. Sweat gathered at her collar. The star on her shoulder, the one Brennan had flicked, the one he demanded she remove, caught the light and held it. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her personal cell phone. She dialed a number from memory. It rang twice. "Nathan," she said, "it's Wanda. I'm at the pavilion. I think you should come over here. Bring your sergeant major." She hung up, slid the phone back into her pocket, looked at Brennan. "He's on his way," she said. Brennan frowned. "Who?" "Your commander." The word hit him like a bucket of ice water. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. His eyes searched her face for a bluff and found nothing but granite. The wait began. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Kyle Brennan looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him wasn't as solid as he thought. "Man, are you kidding me right now?" Imagine you're standing there. You survived actual war zones. You bled for this country. And some dude who can barely spell general is calling you a dog on your own base. Imagine that. What would you do? Colonel Nathan Albright came through the crowd like a man walking into a burning building. He was in civilian clothes, polo shirt, khakis, brown loafers, off-duty, relaxed. But there was nothing relaxed about the way he moved. His stride was fast, his jaw was locked. His command sergeant major walked one step behind him, matching his pace. Albright had heard Wanda's voice on the phone. He'd known her for over 20 years. He had heard that voice, calm, tired, proud, even laughing. But he had never, not once, heard it the way it sounded on that call. Controlled. Too controlled. The way a pressure cooker sounds right before the valve blows. He pushed through the edge of the crowd. People parted for him. They knew his face, even in civilian clothes. Then he saw it. He saw Wanda first, standing alone, dress uniform, star on her shoulder, face like carved stone. Then he saw his 3 soldiers, standing in front of her. Swanson's phone still raised, Brennan's chest still puffed, Combs half hiding behind both of them. Then he saw it. Wanda's military ID still lying face up on the grass. The word general catching the sunlight like an accusation. Albright stopped dead. The color drained from his face. Not slowly, all at once. Like someone pulled a plug. His sergeant major saw it too. The older man's eyes went wide. His hand came up to his mouth. He whispered 2 words that Albright didn't need to hear because he was already thinking them. Oh, God. Albright straightened his back. Even in a polo shirt and khakis, even at a Saturday barbecue, even surrounded by children eating hot dogs and wives drinking lemonade, he snapped to attention. And he saluted. A crisp, sharp, textbook salute. Right hand to his brow, fingers together, elbow at exactly 45 degrees. The kind of salute they teach you on day 1 at West Point. The same West Point where the woman standing in front of him had been his instructor. "General Underwood, ma'am," he said. His voice carried across the entire pavilion. "Good to see you."
The word hit the crowd like a freight train. General. You could hear the ripple, the gasps, the whispered repetitions. General? She's a general? Oh my God. It moved through the crowd like a wave, starting at the front and rolling all the way to the back, past the grills, past the bounce house, past the parking lot. Brendan's knees buckled. Not a metaphor. His actual knees bent. His body swayed like someone had shoved him from behind. His mouth opened. His lips moved. No sound came out. Swanson's phone dropped to his side. His arm went limp like someone had cut the strings. The screen was still recording, pointed at the ground now, capturing nothing but grass and his own sneakers. Combs turned white. Paper white. He looked like a man who just watched his whole future crumble in real time. Because he had. Albright turned to face his soldiers. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice was ice, the kind of cold that burns. Sergeant Brennan, do you know who you've been speaking to? Brennan's mouth opened and closed. Opened and closed. Like a fish pulled out of water. Sir, we thought... This is Brigadier General Wanda Underwood. Albright let the name land. 1 second. 2. She was my instructor at West Point. Another pause. She wrote my letter of recommendation for battalion command. Longer pause. She is the reason I am standing in front of you right now. Each sentence hit like a sledgehammer, driving a nail deeper into a coffin. Albright walked to where the CAC card lay in the grass. He bent down, picked it up with both hands, brushed the dirt off with his thumb. Carefully, the way you handle something sacred. He walked it back to Wanda and presented it to her with both hands, almost reverently, like he was returning a medal, not an ID card. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said. Quiet. Just for her. Wanda took the card, slid it back into her jacket. She gave Albright a single nod, the kind that said more than any words could. Then the sound started. It began somewhere near the back of the crowd, a single pair of hands clapping, slow, deliberate. Then another pair joined, then another, then a dozen, then the whole pavilion. Soldiers, spouses, children, retirees erupted into applause. Not polite applause, not golf clap applause. The kind of applause that comes from the gut. The kind that shakes the air and makes your chest vibrate. A young black female private near the bounce house wiped tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. A retired sergeant major in a veteran's cap placed his hand over his heart. A little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve and asked, "Mama, is she a superhero?" The barbecue smoke kept rising. The Carolina sun kept shining. The country music had stopped. Someone had finally turned it off. And in the middle of all of it, Wanda Underwood picked up her pan of banana pudding from the table where she'd set it down. She peeled back the foil. She smoothed it with her fingers. She set it neatly next to the other dishes. She wasn't performing. She wasn't making a statement. She was simply continuing her day, because that's what 32 years of service teaches you. You don't let anyone knock you off course. The applause hadn't even finished when Albright turned back to his 3 soldiers. His face had changed. The shock was gone. What replaced it was something worse. Cold, focused fury. The kind that doesn't yell. The kind that whispers. The kind that ends careers. You 3, he said, stand at attention. Now. They snapped upright, Brennan's heels clicked together so hard the sound echoed off the pavilion roof. Swanson's phone was still in his hand. He didn't know what to do with it. Combs looked like he was about to pass out. Albright turned to his command sergeant major. His voice was calm, surgical. Confiscate Corporal Swanson's phone. It's evidence. Contact the provost marshal. I want all 3 of them escorted to the battalion conference room. Immediately. The sergeant major didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, held out his hand to Swanson, and said one word. Phone. Swanson handed it over like a child handing a stolen toy back to a teacher. His fingers were shaking. 2 military police vehicles arrived within 8 minutes. The red and blue lights flashed across the pavilion, bouncing off the grills, the picnic tables, the faces of the crowd that still hadn't moved. The MPs walked the 3 soldiers to the vehicles in full view of every person at that barbecue. Brennan kept his head down. Swanson stared at his own feet. Combs looked back once, over his shoulder, at the crowd, at Wanda, at everything he was leaving behind. Nobody waved goodbye. The battalion conference room smelled like stale coffee and dry erase markers. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The 3 soldiers stood at attention in a row, while Albright sat behind the desk. His sergeant major stood in the corner, arms crossed, face like concrete. Brennan spoke first. He always did. "Sir, we honestly thought she was a civilian in a fake uniform. We were trying to protect the integrity of—" "Stop." Albright held up one finger, just one. "You flicked a general officer's star off her shoulder. You threw her military ID in the dirt. You called her a dog. You called her a monkey. You tried to have her detained by military police." He leaned forward. "Don't you dare talk to me about integrity." Brennan's mouth closed. His Adam's apple bobbed. Swanson tried next. "Sir, I was just recording, for fun. I didn't mean for it to—" "Your recording is now evidence in a UCMJ investigation. Congratulations, Corporal. You filmed your own crime." Combs said nothing. He stared at the floor. His eyes were red. Whether from shame or fear, it was hard to tell. Maybe both. Albright stood up. He placed both hands on the desk and leaned forward until his shadow covered all 3 of them. "Here's what's happening. Effective immediately, all 3 of you are suspended from duty. You are confined to barracks until further notice. Weekend privileges are revoked. A formal investigation is being opened under Article 89, disrespect toward a superior commissioned officer, and Article 128, assault." Assault. The word hit Brennan like a physical blow. His head snapped up. "Assault? Sir, I didn't—" "You made unwanted physical contact with her rank insignia. That's assault under the UCMJ. You can explain your version to the JAG officer." Albright sat back down. He opened a folder on his desk and began writing. The pen scratched against paper in the silent room. He didn't look up again. "Dismissed," he said. "The MPs will escort you back to barracks." The 3 soldiers filed out. The door closed behind them with a click that sounded like a lock. That night, Kyle Brennan sat on his bunk in the barracks and stared at the ceiling. His phone was gone, confiscated as evidence. His wife had already called. She'd heard everything. The base grapevine moves faster than any news channel. She wasn't sympathetic. "What is wrong with you, Kyle?" Her voice crackled through the barracks phone. "You touched a general? You threw her ID on the ground? In front of everybody?" He didn't have an answer. For the first time in his life, Kyle Brennan had nothing to say. He was 2 years from retirement. Full pension, benefits, security. He had a promotion board coming up. He coached his daughter's soccer team on Saturday mornings right there on base. All of it. Every single piece of the life he had built over 14 years, now hung by a thread so thin you could snap it with a whisper. And somewhere across the base, in her modest house in Fayetteville, Wanda Underwood sat in her kitchen. The same kitchen where she had ironed her uniform that morning. She poured herself a cup of coffee. She called her daughter. "How was the barbecue, Mama?" Wanda took a sip, set the mug down. "Interesting," she said. The investigation started Monday morning. Captain Aaron Holloway, JAG Corps, arrived at the Fort Liberty legal office at 0600 with a box of files under one arm and a coffee in the other. She was 31, sharp, methodical, the kind of lawyer who read every line twice and highlighted the parts that mattered in yellow. By 0800, she had 2 videos on her desk. The first was from Derek Swanson's phone, the one he'd been so proud of recording. 12 minutes and 43 seconds. Every word, every frame. The monkey comment, the dog comment, the star flick, the CAC toss, the attempted pat-down demand. All of it, filmed by the perpetrator himself, in high definition, with perfect audio. Holloway watched it 3 times. The third time, she paused on the moment Brennan flicked the star. She zoomed in. You could see his middle finger make contact with the metal. You could see the star tilt on Wanda's shoulder. You could see the smirk on his face. She wrote one word in her notes: undeniable. The second video came from Staff Sergeant Denise Calloway. 9 minutes and 16 seconds. A different angle, wider, steadier, shot from 20 feet away. It captured what Swanson's phone missed: the crowd, the silence, the faces of dozens of people watching a general officer get humiliated and doing absolutely nothing. Holloway watched that one twice. The second time, she focused on the bystanders. She counted 14 phones raised in the crowd by the end of the confrontation. 14 people who recorded it. 0 who intervened. Over the next 5 days, Holloway interviewed 22 witnesses. Soldiers, spouses, retirees, a teenager who had been playing cornhole near the grills. Their statements were consistent, almost identical. Everyone saw the same thing. Everyone heard the same words. Everyone described the same silence. Then Holloway pulled Brennan's service record. She expected a clean file. She expected a solid NCO with one terrible lapse in judgment. What she found was a pattern. 3 prior counseling statements for unprofessional conduct. 2 complaints from subordinates about hostile language, and 1 formal complaint filed 2 years ago by a black female specialist named Tara Edmonds, alleging that Brennan had called her affirmative action trash during a training exercise. That complaint had been dismissed. The previous supervisor wrote it off as a misunderstanding between soldiers. No investigation, no follow-up, no accountability. Holloway added it to the file. The pattern wasn't new. The only thing new was that this time the target had a star on her shoulder. On Thursday of that same week, the video leaked. Not Swanson's video, Calloway's. A secondary source obtained a copy, Holloway never determined how, and uploaded it to Twitter at 9:14 p.m. Eastern Time. By midnight, it had 2 million views. By sunrise, it had 8 million. By the following afternoon, it had crossed 20 million. The hashtags came fast. Hashtag General Underwood. Hashtag Respect the Rank. Hashtag Stolen Valor of Racism. They trended on every platform: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. The video was everywhere: cable news, morning shows, late-night monologues. CNN ran a segment called The General They Didn't See. MSNBC interviewed 3 retired black female officers who shared their own stories of being mistaken for janitors, secretaries, and cafeteria workers on military bases where they held command. Fox News ran it as a discipline story. Soldiers forget chain of command, but even their anchors couldn't spin away from the video. The footage spoke for itself. The Secretary of the Army issued a public statement within 48 hours. It was 4 sentences long. The last one read, "The United States Army does not tolerate racism, disrespect, or abuse of any service member, regardless of rank, race, or gender. Those responsible will be held fully accountable." Wanda was invited to appear on every major network: CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. She declined every single one. Instead, she released a written statement. 1 paragraph, 63 words. "I did not serve 32 years to become a headline. I served so that every soldier, regardless of race or gender, could wear this uniform with pride. What happened at Fort Liberty is not unique to me. It happens every day to service members who do not have a star on their shoulder. They are the ones who deserve your attention." The statement went viral on its own. It was shared more than the video. 6 weeks after the barbecue, the legal proceedings concluded. Sergeant First Class Kyle Brennan was tried by special court-martial. The charges? Article 89, disrespect toward a superior commissioned officer, and Article 128, assault. He pleaded not guilty to both. The trial lasted 3 days. The videos were played. The witnesses testified. Brennan's defense attorney argued that his client genuinely believed the uniform was fraudulent and acted out of concern for military standards. The panel didn't buy it. Guilty on both counts. The sentence? Reduction in rank to E1, private. Forfeiture of all pay and allowances for 6 months, and a bad conduct discharge. 14 years of service. Gone. His pension? Gone. His benefits? Gone. His rank, his reputation, his career, all of it, burned to the ground by his own hand. Corporal Derek Swanson accepted non-judicial punishment under Article 15. Reduced in rank to E2, 45 days of extra duty. He was administratively separated from the Army with a general discharge, not dishonorable, but enough to disqualify him from most veterans' benefits. The video he was so proud of filming became the single most damning piece of evidence in the case. Specialist Tyler Combs received a formal letter of reprimand. His career wasn't over, but the letter would follow him to every promotion board, every assignment, every review for the rest of his service. He wrote Wanda a handwritten apology, 3 pages, front and back. She read it. She set it aside without comment. The Inspector General's investigation went further. It reopened the dismissed complaint from 2 years earlier, the one filed by Specialist Tara Edmonds. The supervisor who buried it received a letter of reprimand of his own. Edmonds was contacted, interviewed, and offered a formal apology from the command. Fort Liberty implemented mandatory unconscious bias training across the entire installation. A new module on rank recognition and assumptions was added to the curriculum. Wanda was asked to chair an advisory panel on equity and inclusion within the 18th Airborne Corps. She accepted. The Army War College invited her to deliver a keynote lecture the following spring. She gave it a title that fit on a single line. The uniform is the uniform. 1 year later, Wanda Underwood was promoted to Major General, 2 stars. The ceremony was held at Fort Liberty, the same base, the same pavilion where a sergeant had flicked a star off her shoulder and told her she didn't belong. This time, the pavilion was filled with folding chairs. 300 people sat in neat rows. Officers, enlisted soldiers, families, retirees, media. Lieutenant General Raymond Adler pinned the second star onto her shoulder. The medal caught the afternoon sun, the same Carolina sun that had been shining the day everything changed. When the star was set, Adler stepped back and saluted. The crowd stood. The applause shook the pavilion roof. Wanda smiled. Not a big smile, not a performance, just a small, steady curve at the corner of her mouth. The kind of smile that comes from a woman who has been through the fire and walked out the other side, still standing. Her daughter, Aisha, was in the front row. Little Nyla sat on her lap, waving a tiny American flag she didn't understand yet. But one day she would. One day she'd look at photos of this moment and understand exactly what her grandmother carried, and exactly what it cost. After the ceremony, Wanda drove home in the same gray sedan. She parked in the regular lot. She never did switch to the VIP section. That Sunday, she made banana pudding, her mother's recipe. She brought it to the next base event in the same foil-covered pan. Some things don't change. Some things shouldn't. Kyle Brennan was discharged 3 months after the court-martial. He moved back to his hometown in rural Ohio. Got a job at a warehouse, night shift, loading pallets. His ex-wife filed for divorce 2 weeks after the sentencing. She got primary custody of their daughter. The girl quit her soccer team. She didn't want the other kids to know her dad's name. He gave one interview, a local newspaper. The reporter asked him if he had anything to say to General Underwood. Brennan paused for a long time. Then he said, "I made assumptions I shouldn't have." He didn't say sorry. He never did. Derek Swanson moved back to his parents' house in Indiana. He deleted every social media account he had. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all of it. The guy who used to film everything for clout couldn't stand to be seen anymore. His mother told a neighbor he barely left his room for the first 3 months. 6 months later, he enrolled in community college. He picked a major in criminal justice. Whether that was irony or growth, that's for you to decide. Tyler Combs was the one nobody expected anything from. He was the quiet one, the follower, the guy who stood in the back with his hands in his pockets and his mouth shut while a woman got torn apart. But the letter of reprimand did something to him. He requested a transfer, got one. New base, new unit, new start. And at that new unit, something shifted. He became the soldier who spoke up. When a group of guys made a joke about a female officer, Combs was the one who said, "That's not funny." When a new black recruit got hazed during PT, Combs was the one who reported it. It didn't erase what he did. Nothing could. But it changed what he did next. And sometimes, that's the only redemption a person gets. Staff Sergeant Denise Calloway was promoted to Sergeant First Class the following spring. She credits Wanda Underwood as the reason she applied for officer candidate school. "I watched a general stand there and take everything they threw at her," Calloway said in her application essay. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't break. If she can do that with a star on her shoulder, I can earn one of my own. Her application was accepted. This story was never about one sergeant and one general. It was about what happens when people decide, based on nothing but skin color, who belongs and who doesn't. It was about the crowd that watched and said nothing. It was about the silence that gave hatred room to breathe. Wanda Underwood didn't need that star to be worthy of respect. She was worthy of it the moment she raised her right hand and swore to serve. Just like every other soldier who ever put on that uniform. The uniform doesn't see color. The question is whether we can say the same about ourselves. Because the truth is, there are Wandas everywhere. In every office, every hospital, every courtroom, every base. Women who show up, do the work, earn the rank, and still get told they don't belong. The only difference is, most of them don't have a star on their shoulder when it happens. And nobody calls a colonel to come set the record straight. Nah, man, this is crazy. This story's fiction, but imagine you standing there. You bled for this country, and they call you a dog. What would you do? Comment below. If this hit you, like, share, subscribe. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody expected.